Welcome to Studio Berlin, dear audience. Today we will host an 85-year-old psychologist and also best-selling author and with a truly inspiring and remarkable healing story, Dr. Richard Louis Miller. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Turkbot. I'm really honored to be here with you today. And
Thank
I
you.
and I'm so happy to be broadcasting to the Turkish people because
Yeah.
as you know, we talked a little bit before the program, and I'll discuss it more during the program, that I have a very special connection to the Turkish people through my grandmother.
Yeah, I'm really wondering, and I want to hear this story, amazing story. Again, I know, but I want my audience to know. Okay,
Yes.
please don't forget to let us know. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm so happy to host you here on IPN International News Agency, and welcome. First of all, could you tell us a little bit of yourself?
How far back do you want me to go, Tugpa? You want you want me to go back to childhood, or do you want me to stay as an adult?
I know you have many amazing, inspiring stories, but
I
first, as a doctor or your whole life, shortly.
well, um my life, started in New York City, and very soon when I was a little boy, we moved to the swamps of Florida, where my father was stationed on an Air Force base during World War II. So I had the wonderful privilege of growing up in a swamp, which for a little boy was exciting. It was like living in a jungle, and I really loved it. Then after the war, we came back to New York City, and I went to school there, and I was very fortunate to go to the very prominent Stuyvesant High School, which is a world famous school. We've produced the most Nobel Prize winners and PhDs, perhaps, than any high school in the world. And then I went to college, and I went to graduate school. I had a very interesting experience right in the at the end of my college career in 1959. I was very idealistic, and I went to Cuba to join the revolution with Fidel Castro. Of course, I was a teenager and hardly knew what I was doing, but I thought this was a wonderful revolution against a terrible dictator um, that Castro was doing. So I went down there and I met with Fidel. He was just a young fellow in his 20s. His brother Raul was young, and Che Guevara. They were all young guys. Listen,
Oh,
people don't realize they took over a whole country. They were in their 20s, and I was late teens. So I'm sitting around in the Hotel Presidente with Che Guevara, and he says to me, "Do you know what I did before I was a revolutionary?" And I said, "Yes, you're a medical doctor." And he says, "But you haven't gotten your doctorate yet, have you?" And I said, "No." He says, "Get your ass back to America and get your doctorate before you get involved in revolutions. That you need to get your education first." Well, I listened. I got on a plane. I went back to the United States, and I got my PhD, my master's and my PhD in
yes.
clinical psychology, and I listened to him. Unfortunately, as we know, he was killed by the CIA, not long after that. And then, of course, we know that, Fidel went in a very different direction, which was very disappointing to me. After graduate school, I taught at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I taught psychology there, and I was a therapist there. And then I came to California and I taught at Stanford for 1 year. And since then, I've been involved in various aspects of private practice. I started a health sanctuary north of San Francisco in 1972 that is still flourishing. It's called the Health Sanctuary at Wilbur Hot Springs, and it's a natural hot springs that we use in the healing. Another part of my career, I started a chemical dependency program, and it was a pioneering effort in bringing holistic health into chemical dependence, and it was called Coke Enders Alcohol and Drug Program, and during a 10-year period, I treated 1,500 people for chemical dependence, and I had the highest published success rate in the United States. And people came to me from all over the world. Um, some other aspects of my career, talking professionally now,
Yeah.
are that I have been hosting my own program. It's called Mind, Body, Health, and Politics for 20 years. For the first 15 years or so, I was on National Public Radio, and then I morphed it into what's called an internet radio broadcast, Mind, Body, Health, and Politics. And I have a lot of fun, just like you do, hosting prominent people from all over the world. In the early 2000s, I hosted the longest running series on psychedelic medicine that had ever been done in the United States. And this contributed to what is now considered the psychedelic renaissance, because there's more research going on all around the world that had ever been done before. And I've published now 5 books on psychedelic medicine. So that has been another aspect of my contribution.
Yeah.
So that's sort of a thumbnail sketch of my professional career. It's not my personal career.
Oh my God. I wonder about your personal career. What a life. Oh my God, doctor.
Yes, I've had an adventurous personal life as well, because being a person who spends so many hours a week
Yeah.
sitting in the office treating patients, when I was outside the office, I sought adventure and excitement. But then something else happened that is relevant here, Tugpak. While I was at the University of Michigan, I was introduced to psychedelic medicines. That was in the 1960s. And I took various psychedelic medicines, including LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, peyote, and MDMA. And one of the things that happened was that I faced death, because in large doses of psychedelic medicine, there happens what's referred to as a near ego death experience.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it feels like you're really dying. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm just dying on on a medicine and it's going to be over. It feels like the real thing.
Real experience.
It's a
Yes.
real experience. And so I conquered my fears of death
Yeah.
at a very early age in life. I was in my 20s. And in some ways, that was a wonderful confidence building experience, because I've had a life without the fear of death, which I will tell you more about with some other stories. But there's also a negative aspect to conquering the fear of death that I discovered.
Yeah.
The negative aspect of conquering the fear of death is that I became what I consider now reckless. In other words, I was so not afraid of death that I did dangerous things. And part of my doing the dangerous things was because, as I mentioned to you, I was in my office for my work, sitting in an office all day. So when I went out into the world and I had this no fear of death, I wanted to do things that were exciting and scary. So I did things like downhill skiing, flying a private little plane, motorcycling.
How
Very,
old were you those years? 2000s.
I conquered my fear of death in the 1960s when I
Yeah.
was in my 20s. I started engaging in these dangerous things
Yeah.
in my early 40s
Ah,
because in between, I did other things like have a family and have children. But in my 40s, I started doing these things. And I got into some very serious trouble because as a result of
How?
this, well, as a result of this fearlessness,
Yeah.
I got involved in these dangerous things, and one of them was motorcycling. And in my close to 50 years old, I had a major vehicular accident where I was hit head on by a huge recreational vehicle called a Winnebago. And it hit me and it ran over my legs and crushed both of my legs. It literally ran over me and crushed me.
Yeah.
Now, while I was laying there dying, I did something that was very important to save my life. And this is something important for your listeners
Yeah.
because when we have a tragic or huge accident, our body goes into shock, and the shock often stops the heart because we stop breathing and we have respiratory arrest or a cardiac failure.
Yeah.
But because of my professional work, I was a master breather. I knew how to control my breathing. So when I was laying there after being run over, I immediately took control of my breathing and regulated my breathing, thereby sending oxygen everywhere in my body where it was needed rather than cutting off the oxygen supply, which can happen with a respiratory arrest. As a result of my regulating my breathing, I saved my life. I opened my eyes and I told the people who were standing above me, "Get me a helicopter. I'm going to live." And they got me the helicopter. Now what they didn't know is while I was laying there regulating my breathing with my eyes closed, I had a vision and I saw myself leaving my body and dying and going away. I could literally see myself leaving my body. And I got way out in the darkness. And all of a sudden, I saw a picture of myself sitting in my office without any legs, strapped into a chair with a strap holding me up. And I was consulting with a patient, doing my work without legs. And I heard a voice from out of the cosmos saying to me, "You can still make a contribution even without your legs." And when I heard that voice, I saw myself coming back into my body. And it was then that I opened my eyes and I said, "Get the helicopter. I'm going to live." So the helicopter came and they took me to the hospital. And I was in the emergency room and I'm breathing to keep myself steady and balanced in a state of homeostasis instead of going wild. And a doctor, all of a sudden felt a huge yank on my leg, terribly painful. And I screamed. I said, "What's that?" And this man said to me, "Hello, I'm Dr. Bowden, and I just relocated your leg. The lower part wasn't connected
Yeah.
to the upper part." And I said, "Thank you for doing that, but next time I think better to introduce yourself first and then relocate my leg." And he he could he he could hardly believe I had the presence to say that. And then he said to me, "Dr. Miller, I'm sorry, but we're gonna be amputating your legs." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, do you realize what happened to you?" And I said, "Well, of course. I've kept myself conscious the whole time." And he said, "Well, you could be bleeding out. You were run over by a giant truck. You could be bleeding to death right now." And I said, "Doctor, that accident happened at least 45 minutes or longer ago, because that's how long it took for them to get the helicopter and get me here. If I was gonna bleed out, I would be bleeding out by now." And he said, "Well, that's a good point." But he said, "The nerves the nerves in
Yeah.
your legs, they're ruined." And I said, "Look at my toes, doctor. I'm able to wiggle my toes." And he said, "Well, you're right." And I said, "How about doing an angiogram and inspecting the inside of my arteries to see the damage?" And he said, "Okay." So they did the angiogram, and he came back and he said to me, "I don't know, it's like a miracle, but your vascular system is intact. You're not bleeding inside your legs. The nerves are working." And I said, "Well, then it looks like we have some surgery to do in order to fix all the broken bones."
Yeah.
And so I told him I wanted to contact a famous surgeon that I knew, Dick Stedman, who was the United States ski team orthopedic surgeon. They got him on the phone. He was in Aspen, Colorado on a ski slope. He said, "Richard, they can't fly you to me in the shape you're in, but there's good news. The doctor standing next to you just did a 1-year residency with me, and he can do the surgery." I said, "Okay, let's do it." So the first surgery was 15 and a half hours. After the surgery,
Ooh.
I woke up in intensive care. The surgery put the bones together. The doctor came in and he said, "As you requested, we saved your legs, but you're gonna be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life." And I looked at him and I said, "Not only won't I be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, I will complete 2 triathlons within 2 years, and I give you my word." Well, within 2 years, I completed 2 triathlons. I got out of the wheelchair. I did the running part of the triathlons with special, crutches.
Yeah.
I did the bicycling, and I did the swimming. And then eventually, 6 months later, I stood up out of the wheelchair, and I took 1 step. And when I took that 1 step, tears came down my face. Almost now I could start to cry again, because I knew if I took 1 step, I'd be able to walk again. And right now, if I can stand up out of this chair, and I can walk, and I can walk again. I'm able to walk. And this is a story that has lots of lessons in it. One, it's a lesson about the importance of learning how to control breathing,
Yeah.
so that when big things happen in our lives, including anxiety, we can deal with it with breathing. Breathing is the best treatment for anxiety that my profession has. It's faster than a speeding Valium. It's better than any pills because what the body needs when we're scared and anxious is to regulate the breathing. Regulate the breathing. So I saved my life with the breathing, but also it's a story about resilience and persistence
Yeah.
because it was because of my resilience and my persistence that I was able to get out of that wheelchair and get into a weightlifting program and build up my atrophied legs because they had wasted away to nothing in the wheelchair and allowed me then to stand and walk again. So this is a big story in my life. It's only one of several times that my life has been threatened, and I've been able to conquer the threat and continue in my life.
Congrats first.
Thank
But it's not luck. It is not a luck. You know, it's a choice, as you told. Am I right? It's a
Yes.
choice. It's
Yeah.
not luck.
No, it's a choice. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's a choice to live, and it's a choice to grasp that the gift of life
Yeah.
is the hugest gift we have, and it's to be cherished and not taken lightly, and to maintain this life. You know, the untold number of eggs and sperm that never connected, that never made it to life,
Yeah.
they don't even know that they don't exist. But what we know, what you know, Tugpa, what I know, is that somehow a sperm and an egg came together and gave you life and gave me life. And it's this unusual, unique, special adventure that we get to live for a certain period of time. And I think it's in our interest as human beings to do everything we can to maintain this gift that we've been given, to take care of it, to cherish it, to love it, because it's what we've been given. And each one of us on this planet is special and unique because we were the ones who made it,
Yeah.
right? And no matter what we've been dealt, and
Yeah.
some of us have been dealt some pretty bad cards, some very challenging lives. But even those lives are more of an experience than no life at all. And that's what the ones who didn't make the connection have no life at all.
So we are miracles, you know? Yeah.
We are miracle. We are truly, every one of us is truly a miracle. There's no question about it. When you think of what it took to bring us here,
Yeah. It was very inspiring for me, and for my audience too. I know. Okay, so we will come back. The other miracle of your life, the other amazing healing story of your life. But I want to ask about what do you think is the most important sign of good mental health? You know, it's not easy in this century to
I
keep it.
understand.
Yeah.
There are several things that are involved with good mental health.
Yeah.
And one of them is to be able to learn how to make ourselves feel calm, how to make ourselves feel serene, how to make ourselves feel comfortable so that we can walk through the world without discord, without pain, without anxiety. And this involves learning tools that we really need to be taught in school. But I went to school for 20, I don't know, 20 years. I went to college for 11 years, and they never taught me some essential tools that I'm gonna mention right now.
Yeah.
Here's a tool that is essential for mental health. This thing that we have in our cranium inside here, we call it our brain.
Yeah.
We call it our consciousness. We have different names for it, right? It is a very powerful tool. What we forget very often, most people forget, is that it's our tool to use. It's not
Yeah.
us to be the subject of the tool. But this tool is so powerful that it wants to be the boss. It wants to control the show. So we can be walking along, we can be working, we can be dancing, we can even be making love. And all of a sudden, this tool will open up and start talking to us about topics that are not even related to what we're doing. And we've all had that experience. You're sitting and working on something hard, and all of a sudden your brain starts talking about something else. And I use the example of making love because making love is an exquisite experience that's very sensual. And if
Yeah.
we go into our heads, it takes us away from the sensuality. And we can be making love, and all of a sudden the computer turns on and starts talking about work or
Yes.
baseball or
Yes.
politics.
Dinner. Dinner.
Tot-
Everything, yeah.
tot- Totally distracting. So, an essential tool for living with good mental health is learning how to make that tool our tool and not our boss. Each of us is challenged to learn how to simply turn that little tool off. Turn it off in the same way that we close the computer. When we do not have the skill to turn our mind off, it's as if we're sitting at our desk and all of a sudden our computer opens itself up and starts typing. But
Yeah.
that's what happens to all of us. This thing opens itself up and starts talking or starts showing us videos. It does, it'll make videos, you know
Yeah.
that, or it'll make pictures or music. It does everything. It's a critical tool to learn how to both shut it off so that we are completely still without any sounds in here whatsoever, so that we're quiet. Or the other skill is simply to learn how to change the channel. So if the computer opens up and we're involved, let's say, in finance, and the computer opens up with a baseball game, it's our challenge to learn how to change the channel and turn on finance. Or let's say we're sitting alone in a park, having a nice quiet moment,
Yeah.
looking at the squirrels, taking a little break, and all of a sudden the computer opens up and turns on with some critical, nasty memory of something we did that we're not proud of, something we don't like. It's our challenge to learn how to change the channel and put on a musical comedy, because we can do
Yeah.
that, because there are musical comedies on the computer, just like there are on the computer that I
Yeah.
have in front of me talking to you. Everything imaginable that we've ever heard is stored on our computer. And so when we learn how to change the channel, we can change it and direct the mind to think about and show movies about what we choose rather than what it chooses.
Yeah.
So this is a very important tool. Another tool for mental health that you're asking about is knowing how to voluntarily breathe. We all know how to involuntarily breathe. We're doing it all the time. We're always breathing, but that's not the same as voluntary breathing. Voluntary breathing is a tool that takes care of those moments, like what happened to me when we have an accident.
Mm.
Voluntary breathing is what calms anxiety, and some people have not only anxiety, but they have high anxiety that's called a panic attack.
Yeah.
Breathing, breathing is the antidote to anxiety and panic. Breathing is an essential tool for living with good mental health. So there's two extremely important tools.
Yeah.
One is taking control of the mind that wants to be the boss. The other is breathing. What else is important for good mental health? Exercise. The body likes and must be exercised. It likes motion. It keeps everything fluid. We are built in a particular way. We have what's called a skeletal system, which is the bones that give us stature and allow us to mobilize. But what makes the bones move
Yeah.
are what we call muscles and tendons. They are the bands that we send information to that makes the skeletal system, like my arm or my body, move. Without muscles, I would just fall down on the floor because they were the only bones. But with just muscles, without bones, I'd also fall on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
No rigidity. We need the combination. Now, what the body likes about motion is it keeps these things we call muscles, they're like long rubber bands, it keeps them fluid and elastic.
Yeah.
Because if we let our muscles get tight, they can't do their job of making motion. Furthermore, when they get tight, they hurt. It's called muscle pain. And we have back pain, we have arm pain. A lot of people have back pain.
Yeah.
This is because those muscles have tightened up. So another essential tool is hydration.
Yeah.
We are made up of 83% water,
Water. Yeah.
right? The muscles need water to stay elastic. Otherwise, they get dry and tight, and then they don't work very well. So, motion and drinking water are essential tools for living with good mental health.
Wow.
Why do I say the muscles and the hydration when you're talking about mental health? Because there's no such thing as mental health without physical health, and yet no such thing as physical health without mental health. If we have tremendous pain, it affects us psychologically. If we have screwed up psychological stuff going on, it affects us physically. We get disorders. So they're connected. So we've got to keep hydrated and
Yeah.
stay in motion. Now comes another essential for good mental health.
Wow.
All of this that I'm talking about, the mind, the body, the skeletal system, the muscles, they all depend on fuel because any mechanism that moves needs fuel for energy. And
Yeah.
we human beings have two kinds of fuel. One is oxygen. That's one of our essential fuels. We've got to have oxygen. And in order to have oxygen, which comes into our lungs and then is picked up by the blood and distributed through the body with blood. We need clean air. If you
Yeah.
put dirty air into the lungs, it decreases the fuel purity. It would be
Mhm.
like going to the gasoline station and putting dirty fuel in your car. What happens? We all know what happens when you put dirty fuel in your car. After a while, it gets plugged up and stops working. You have to use clean fuel to keep the car going. You need clean air to keep the system going. If you live in a place with a lot of polluted air,
Yeah.
over a period of time, it'll cause problems with the system because that's an essential fuel. I said there were two fuels, one oxygen, the other is the food that we ingest. We eat, we call it eating. We take substances, put them in our mouth, we chew them up and swallow them, and the body converts that ingestion to the second kind of fuel that we need. So what does that tell us? It tells us once again that it's very important to eat clean fuel. Because once again, if you put dirty fuel in your system, it's just a matter of time before it causes a problem. How much time? That varies from place to place. But what we do know, and this is so important, Tugpa,
Yeah.
in many countries of the world, life expectancy is in the 70s. But we also know, Tugpa, that in many countries of the world, life expectancy is in the 20s and 30s. They only live until they're 30 or 35. Why is that? Because they don't have access to clean fuel. They don't have clean water. There are approximately 8 billion people on the planet.
Yeah.
1 out of every 4 of those people, I say with great sadness, does not have access to clean water. 1 out of every 4 people on the planet are drinking dirty fuel every single day, and that dirty fuel eventually kills them. You cannot eat dirty fuel, and you cannot breathe dirty air and continue to live with good health, which was your original question. What do we need for good health? You asked good mental health. I expanded it to good health in general. So these things that I've now outlined for you are the essentials for living with good health. And to the extent that you don't cover the bases, there's liable to be various forms of difficulty. Now, on the other hand, on the other side of difficulty is what happens when you do cover the bases, when you do take control of your mind, when you are a master breather, when you do drink clean water and eat clean food and exercise the body. What happens then? You build what we call a robust immune system. The immune system are the fighters that keep the invaders, the germs and the bacteria that would hurt us. The immune system are our fighters. They're our Praetorian Guard. They are essential dealing with that which comes in. So I will follow that with a story from my own life.
Yeah.
5 years ago, roughly 5 years ago, 4.5, in a short 2-week period, I was given 2 life-threatening diagnoses. One, melanoma, nodular melanoma, cancer on the side of my face. 2, I was told I was in heart failure. My heart was no longer pumping blood, which contains the oxygen.
Yeah.
The blood is the delivery system for the oxygen. My heart was not delivering enough blood to keep me alive. Within 2 weeks, I got both those diagnoses. So, I got a good surgeon
Yeah.
at the medical school in San Francisco, and we had the cancer cut out of the side of my face, and then he did what's called a sentinel lymphectomy, where they cut into the lymph node because that's the first place the cancer goes, and then the lymph node sends it out, and the cancer would spread to the rest of the body. I, unfortunately, was misdiagnosed. My doctor missed this cancer, and I had it for a whole year before it was diagnosed. It was diagnosed because I said to him after a year, "You know, this thing you keep spraying with ethyl chloride, it's not going away. I think we need to send it in for a biopsy." He sends it in, and it was cancer. So I've had it for a year.
Yeah.
When I had the surgery, Dr. Jonathan George says to me, "Richard, the cancer did not spread. We got it all out with the surgery." I said, "How could I have had an aggressive cancer for a whole year and it didn't spread?" And he said, "Your immune system built a container around the cancer and prevented it from spreading for the entire year." The immune system, the fighters that I was talking about a minute ago, my fighters built that capsule around and prevented it from spreading. So with the surgery, I was cancer-free. Then I had to deal with the cardiac failure. The cardiologist said, "You've got to rest and take it easy because you will not have the energy to do exercise." I went in the exact opposite direction. I doubled my exercise, and I exercised for 1 hour every single day on an elliptical machine, aerobic exercise, 7 hours a week. Plus, every day I took time to do the breathing exercise and control my breathing. Every day I worked on making sure that I was in control of my computer. I didn't allow it to be the boss. It wanted to scare me. Bad things are going to happen. Oh, you might die. This is the end. You just got a bad diagnosis. All the kinds of junky things that the computer is capable of saying. I shut it down. I said to that computer, "You're wrong. I'm going to conquer this. I'm going to be strong. My heart is going to come back. You are 100% wrong and giving me all this nonsense. Wait and see what I do." So I put together a program for myself. I worked on the program. 3 months later, I had what's called an echocardiogram, where they check out my heart, and my cardiologist said, "You're no longer in heart failure." I had that same test done every 3 months for the
Yeah.
last 4.5 years, and last year, my cardiologist said, "I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to fire you. You no longer need a cardiologist. You have a healthy heart." I continue to meet with him. I met with him just 2 weeks ago, Dr. Anand Soni at UC Medical. He's a great cardiologist, and he smiled, and he said, "You still have a healthy heart. You really don't need a cardiologist." I said, let's keep testing me, but instead of every 3 months, we'll test me every 6 months just to make sure. And I told them that I maintain my program. I added something to the program that I think all people over 50, if not 40, need to consider. And this is another, it's sort of a sidebar to the question you asked about health. This really is more for elderly people over 40 and 50. And here's what it is.
Yeah.
Our scientists tell us that somewhere between age 40 and 50, our muscle mass, our muscles start to decrease. They literally start to waste away at the rate of somewhere around 1 to 3% every single year. Now, this is extremely important information for everybody, Tugpa, because if you happen to be one of those people that loses only 1% a year and you start losing it at 50, by the time you're 70, you've lost 20%. 1% a year for 20 years, you've lost 20% of your muscle mass. So what that tells us, Tugpa, is that when you see old people leaning forward or having a hard time walking, it's not because age makes you bend over. It's because if you don't have the muscles to keep the skeletal system erect, like I mentioned earlier, you start to fall over from lack of strength. So, what is needed as we age, we have to lift weights. It's not necessarily fun. It's just another piece of maintenance,
Yeah.
but it needs to be done. So what I started doing when I got the heart failure diagnosis, I started lifting weights. Some people think I may be overdoing it, but I'm a zealot. So I now lift weights 4 hours every single week. And I am getting, instead of weaker, I'm getting stronger. My muscles are building up. My wife can see it. I'm not going to take off my clothes and show you, but I've got some serious muscles going underneath here. And
Oh
and
my
and so I can maintain my skeletal system, and I can walk around and I can be a flexible person
God.
even though I'm 86 years old. I can dance, I can cut a rug, I can do all kinds of things
Congrats.
because of the combination of the aerobic exercise and the weightlifting. What I call it is maintenance. You bring your car in for maintenance, you got to bring this thing in for maintenance. And if you don't do the maintenance with your car, it's going to cause a problem. If you don't do the maintenance with this thing, it's also going to cause a problem. It's time consuming. I know that. I know people are going to listen to this and say, how can I possibly do this? And the answer is, it's not a question of how you can possibly do it. It's that if you don't do it, the effects are going to be dramatic on your system because we've get this beautiful gift, but it doesn't come without some work. And part of the work is maintenance. We have to maintain the body and we have to maintain the consciousness so that we have good mental health and we have good physical health. And so, the underlying message really here is maintenance.
Yeah.
There's maintenance. It comes with the package. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's not a matter of how can I make time for a person who's serious about maintaining their gift of life. It's a question of where am I going to build the time into my schedule because staying healthy is the most important thing I can do. I mean, we all know this. Without good health, what is life? A headache, just a headache, can ruin a whole day. A toothache, getting an organ problem with a kidney or a liver can ruin everything. But keeping good health can make everything possible.
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it, and that's what I suggest other people consider looking at it as well, because the consequences of not doing the maintenance are severe. They can be very severe. Some people are lucky, they have great genetics, they don't do very much, and they still people always say to me when I'm talking this way, I hear people say all the time, "Well, look at Winston Churchill. He didn't exercise, and he drank all this whiskey, and he still lived to be an old man." Well, yes, if you get spectacular genetics, you can get away with a lot, and you can probably live a life without getting in trouble. But for the rest of us who
Yeah.
don't have those spectacular genetics, there are too many things out there that are dangerous, and it's worth having a robust immune system to deal with them.
Yeah, but in Turkish, we say "Maşallah." You know "Maşallah"?
Mashallah.
Yeah. It means like, God bless you, God save you, like that. So I want to say you, mashallah, God bless
Oh,
you. Really,
thank
you are amazing.
mashallah. Thank you. I have a new
Mashallah.
word. Mashallah. Spell it.
Yeah.
Spell it for me in
Yeah.
English. Spell it.
M-A-S, but called she on our
Oh,
Turkish.
I
So
understand.
yeah, S-A-L-L-A-H. Yeah, mashallah.
Mashallah. I will
Yeah.
use. I like that.
Please
That'll be
use, yes.
that'll be a new word for me. Well,
Yes. So, on this journey, cancer, heart disease, didn't you have difficult times? Because it's not easy to manage your emotions. What about it? What would you like to say about this? It's not easy always. It's not easy to manage our emotions. Uh, we generally something happens bad, we first think negative, negative thoughts rush into our minds. So how did you manage emotions?
we have to come back to those basic tools
Yeah.
that I listed. And when we have negative emotions, one of two things is happening. Either the computer has turned on and it's saying negative things to us and creating negative emotions, such as criticisms. People don't realize when they criticize themselves the cumulative effect, the cumulative effect of the negative comments. For example, if you say 3 things negative to yourself every single day,
Yeah.
that's almost 100 negative things a month. That's over 1,000 negative things a year. That means if you start saying negative things to yourself at age 18, by the time you're 28, you've said 10,000 negative things to yourself. 10,000 negative things is a lot of negativity for any human being to live with. Can you imagine sitting in a room and having somebody say 10,000 negative things to you? It would be devastating. People do not realize, and we need to learn. It's essential that we learn that a little bit of something over a long period of time is a great deal of something. If we practice 10 times a day for just 30 seconds, breathing properly, that's that's 30 times 10, that's 300 seconds. That's only 5 minutes a day. But 5 minutes a day is 150 times a month. It's 1,800 times a year. So that means if that person started practicing breathing when they were 18 for just 5 little minutes a day, by the time they're 28, they will have practiced 18,000 times. 18,000 times is enough to be a master breather. So by the time they're 28, they're facing the rest of their lives as master breathers to control emotions. It's the number one way to control emotions with the breathing. The second way is to control the negative impact. So suppose you spend 2.5 minutes a day working on controlling the inner computer. That same person at age 28 has now spent 9,000 minutes, is it? These numbers, they're huge when you let them build up over time. So a person doesn't have to become a master breather or a master controller of the brain overnight. They can say at age 18, I'm gonna get there by the time I'm 25. Just a little bit every single day. The problem is people wanna get there immediately. They wanna do 5 hours.
Yeah.
I find 3 hours. I wanna do the whole weekend. It's much
No.
easier and spend a little tiny bit every single day, but make sure you do it every single day. Let's say, for example, a person has low self-esteem. Things happen to them in their lives so that they think lowly of themselves. Let's say that person at age 16 says is taught to say 10 complimentary, nice things to themselves every single day. All it takes is seconds. A
Yeah.
little here, a little nice there. 10 a day, 300 a month, 3,600 a year, 36,000 in 10 years. By the time that 16-year-old is 26, 36,000 compliments, that changes the way they feel about themselves. It has an impact because this inner computer that listens to everything, it's listening to every one of those compliments, and they're having an effect. They are the antidote to the self-criticism. Just a little bit every single day over the years, and those years go by so quickly. I can tell you that at 85, it was just yesterday that I was 18. I mean, it really it goes by faster and faster as you get older.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the big messages that I'm sharing today is the power of a little something on a daily basis over a long period of time. And sometimes the period of time is only a year. I mean, I got out of the wheelchair in 6 months. A little bit of exercise I did every single day, a little motion of the foot, a little motion of my ankle, a little something here every single day. And I got up out of a wheelchair. And then I took 1 step, and then 2 steps, and then 3 steps every single day. When people wanna exercise, what I say to them is, can you walk with your friends for 10 minutes? Most everybody says yes.
Hmm.
So I say, then here's how you're going to start your exercise program. I want you to walk 10 minutes every single day, no more. The next week, I want you to walk 11 minutes. The next week, 12 minutes. Guess what? At the end of the year, they're walking for an hour every single day, effortlessly. Because when you increase by 1 minute a day, it is effortless. It's not oppressive. It's not, oh, how can I do that? It's not, oh, I hope it rains so I won't have to do that. It's just 1 little minute every single day, and you end up an hour. And what happens then? Once you can walk for an hour every day, you can then start jogging, and you can do the same thing with the jogging. Maybe you can start by jogging 15 or 20 minutes and adding 1 minute at a time. And the next thing you know, you can jog for an hour. And after that, you might want to become a runner. So you run for 10 or 15 minutes. I started out at age past 40 doing exactly what I told you. A few minutes more, a few minutes more. Within a few years, I was a marathon runner and I ran 26 miles. And that's a true story. I ran 26 miles.
Congrats.
And I did it again, and I did it again. And that doctor who wanted to cut off my legs, he said he thought that was because of that marathon running that my muscles were strong enough to protect my arteries and veins, and that's why I didn't blow them out and bleed to death. But when I started, I'm telling you, when I started, 10 minutes, 10 minutes was plenty, and I didn't want to do any more. And if there was 2 drops of rain on the window, that was my excuse not to go out. Oh, it's too rainy. I'm not going outside. By the time I was a marathon runner a few years later, I would go out in a rainstorm and I would love it. And I would feel the rain pouring on me. And I would just cruising along in the rain with a nice rain suit. True, true story. A little bit over a period of time becomes a lot of bits. Yeah, true story.
Oh, again, I would say mashallah
Mashallah.
many times in this broadcast. Yeah, mashallah. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
My God. So, I wonder, I want to know about your connection with Turkish people. I want my audience to know this story. Let's
So,
tell.
okay, when I was in college, I had a Turkish girlfriend named Oya Kaynar. And
Oya Kaynar. Oya Kaynar. Yes.
and I thought she was the greatest. And so
Sorry, doctor. Maybe she is watching us, huh? Maybe she will. Huh?
I would love it. I would love it if any of your listeners, they can spread the word. If I could connect with Oya Kainar, it would be a great blessing. It would be so much fun. So I brought Oya home on a Christmas vacation from college to meet my family. And we come in together. First I bring her to my home and my parents meet her and she stays with us. And then we go to see my grandmother, my father's mother. We walk in and my grandmother says hello to her in Turkish. She says, "Oh, I hear you're from Turkey." And Oya looks at her. We're all startled. And the next thing I know, my grandmother is talking to her in Turkish. What we find out that the whole family didn't realize was that when my grandmother and my grandfather left Russia in 1906 or 1908, 1906. My grandmother and my father and his sister, Sophia, moved to Istanbul and formerly Constantinople. And they lived there for a few years because they weren't able to come right directly to the United States. So my grandmother, all her life, knew Turkish, and she would go to some neighborhoods in Manhattan and talk to Turkish people, but she never told anybody. It was like her own little secret.
Yeah.
And then when I bring Oya home, all of a sudden we all find out, and she tells us the whole story. We find out about how she's talking to people. She has Turkish friends. We didn't know any of that. It was her own private little secret all her life
Yeah.
that she kept for herself. Yeah. And so Oya Kainar, everybody, if you could help me find her, oh, that
Yeah.
would be great.
I believe we will find Oya Kaynar hanımefendi şu anda eğer bizi izliyorsanız ya da Oya Kaynar hanımefendiyi şu anda tanıyanlar varsa sorry for my Turkish.
And
Excuse me.
as a result of that,
Yeah.
I've had a special place in my heart for Turkey
Oh.
and the Turkish people all my life, and I always would talk to my grandmother about it after that, and ask her questions like, "Can you remember what it was like living in Turkey, and what was the neighborhoods like?" and things like that.
Yeah. It's incredible.
It was. It's a great little story. And it turns out my father also, although he came to this country young, he was also, quadrilingual. He spoke 4 different languages.
Okay, let's turn back to our topic.
Yes.
What is golden light? I always hear and see golden lights on your messages, on your posts. Is this an imagination or something else?
I've talked today about the importance of taking control of what we call our mind, our inner computer, our cognitive processor. And one of the tools that I've used for myself and for my thousands of patients is a tool of closing our eyes and filling up our consciousness with golden light. Because golden light has a universal appeal as a light of healing. It's the color of the sun, and the sun is what sustains us. Without
Yeah.
the sun, we wouldn't be able to exist. And so I teach people to close their eyes and fill up their mind with golden light. And then what we do over a period of minutes is let that golden light sink down from the mind through the throat, into the chest, into the arms, stomach, groin, legs, and feet, and fill up the whole body with golden light. And I have found that people find this to be very soothing and very healing because we have a lot of positive associations with golden light because of the sun. When we lay in the sun, we feel bathed by it.
Yeah.
People go to beaches to lay in the sun. There have been whole civilizations that were sun worshipers. They worship the sun as a god. And so I use that as a tool, and the tool of golden light. And when I was in the hospital after that big accident where my legs were crushed, I would spend sometimes an hour a day picturing golden strands of light healing my legs, going around my legs. I would just keep picturing it and picturing it. Now, I'm not here to tell you that that healed me or didn't heal me because I have no way of knowing. But what I do know was it made me feel good. It made me feel like I was participating in my healing because there are lots of things, Tugpa, that we don't know about our healing process. And
Yeah.
let me give you an example. If I scratch the back of my hand here and it opens up and blood comes out, and then I put a bandage on it, I know that over a series of days, it's going to heal. You know that also. As long as you're in any kind of decent health, if you scratch yourself and make blood come out, it's going to heal over a period. The scab will form, and then eventually the scab falls off, and then you have a little scar, and then sometimes even the scar goes away. That is part of our healing process. Now, I ask you, Tugpa, when you heal a cut on your body, who healed that? Who did that?
Me.
Exactly, because I didn't do it. Your mother and father, your family, nobody else did it.
Yeah.
You did it, right? But if I then say to you, Tugpa, tell me how you did it, you can't answer me because you don't know how. You could give me a medical reason about how cells, come to you, but you don't really know how you did that. I believe that a day is going to come when we will learn how we did that. We will learn how to take conscious control of our own healing process. Just like I teach how to take conscious control of breathing that everybody can do. So there's involuntary breathing that we all do all the time. And then there's voluntary breathing that I teach for dealing with anxiety and excitement and to control emotions. I believe the same thing is true for healing. I just used the cut on the hand as an example. I think we were going to learn how to take conscious control of the healing process, and we'll be able to do it with kidneys, with livers, with pancreas, and with the heart. And sometimes I'm raising the question as to whether psychedelic medicines may give us the tools we need on how to take control of these processes. It's a speculation on my part. I realize that, but there is a great deal of power in these psychedelic medicines that we have yet to discover. We have been using them for thousands of years, but it's only recently that science has really gotten involved and is starting to teach us how we can use these medicines for our own healing.
Yes, doctor, there is a saying I truly believe in. You are the average of five people you spend the most time with, What does this mean to you? And many of us, find ourselves surrounded by toxic people and negative environments. So, how can we fill our lives with good people, good friends?
This is a great question, Tugpa, because
Thank you.
there's, there's a famous study in psychology where you take five women who are in college and four of them are all menstruating at the same time of the month, and the fifth one is not. And you put them together, living together, and over time, the one who was menstruating on a different cycle starts menstruating on the same cycle as the other four women. And this is a way of validating what you're saying about the effects of five people. We also know that if a thin person hangs around with people who are overweight, over time, that thin person will start to gain weight. It's also true with chemical dependence. If you hang around with a bunch of people who drink a lot of alcohol, over time, there's a high likelihood that you will become a heavy drinker. The same is true for other drugs such as heroin and cocaine. So, first, I have validated what you're saying. Who we hang around with has a pronounced effect on our psychology and our physiology. Now, what to do about it? Well, there's really only one thing to do about it, and that is to sit quietly with yourself and ask yourself, what kind of influence do you want around you? Are you willing to make a conscious choice about your environment, or are you willing to just throw caution to the wind and anybody you come in association with, you'll hang out with? But the same is true for other aspects of living. I talked earlier today about our basic fuel, oxygen, and the food we ingest. How serious is each one of us willing to take those issues? How serious are we willing to look at the air we breathe and the food that we eat? Same is true for the people that we associate with. I realize this is not easy. I'm not saying it because I think it's easy. And there may be many of you listening who are hanging out with people who what we might call negative influence to your mind, your body, or your spirit. And it's not easy to disassociate, especially when those people are family. Then it's really difficult. That might be the most difficult.
Yeah.
No, there's one even more difficult than toxic family members, and that's a toxic spouse. And that does happen. And it's incumbent upon each of us to take the time, and it takes time. This is not something you do while you're rushing to work or while you're doing some other activity. Part of what is necessary to live a full and fulfilling and healthy life is taking moments of quiet alone to sit and look within and without. Really take that time and say, hey, 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 this is the only life I have. I don't get another one. How am I doing? How do I feel about myself? How do I feel about my health? These are tough questions, but they're essential. They're essential if you want to live a full life, because otherwise you're throwing the dice with your life. Now, you can do that if you want, and I'll respect it. It's your life. You want to throw the dice? Throw the dice. But if you want to maximize your chances of having a healthy life, the life that Tugpa referred to before when she said, what does it take to have good health, good mental health? And I expanded it to good health in general. If you want to maximize yourself, then you have to take these little breaks now and then, maybe on a weekend, and sit down. Remember, if you sit down with yourself for only 10 minutes once a week, that's 40 minutes a month. That's 480 minutes a year. You don't have to sit there like some person in a loincloth in a cave in the Himalayas. You can do it as a regular person, just sitting on a park bench once or twice a week for 5 or 10 minutes, asking yourself the real questions. And you all know what those real questions are just as much as I. We all know inside when we close our eyes how we're doing. We all know when we close our eyes how we feel about ourselves. We all know whether we have decent self-esteem or whether we think lowly of ourselves. We all know whether we're beating the hell out of each other ourselves with our minds or whether we're being nice to each other. We all know whether we wake up and have a sense of gratitude for just waking up and saying, wow, I'm here another day. Fantastic. Or whether we wake up with, oh, oh, what am I going to do today? Oh, or worse, when we wake up with the aftermath of trying to quell and do something about our condition with drugs and alcohol. We know what it's like. We all know what it's like to wake up the next morning, or not all, that might be too much. Some of us haven't done that, but for all who have, we know what it's like to wake up with that after morning feeling of dread. It's our option, folks. It's our option. It's our choice, but
Yeah.
it takes a certain amount of work.
Yeah. Dear Dr. Miller, right now I know we have many viewers whose lives have suddenly changed due to an unexpected illness or accident. Maybe they are unhappy. So, what would be the first thing you would suggest to them? The only thing. What was it?
The first thing I suggest is to ask yourself, do you have shelter? Do you have food? Is there food in the refrigerator? Is your shelter warm? Do you have people who love you? If you have shelter, if you have food, if you have a warm place in the shelter, and you have people who love you, you're already ahead of the game, and the sky is the limit. But if you don't have those things, those are the things that you need to work on first and get all the support that you possibly can.
Yeah. If your life were a movie, Doctor, what would its title and message be? Last question.
My life has been a life of mind, body, health, and politics. You might wonder why I add politics to mind, body, health. And the answer is, unfortunate as I believe it is, politicians decide on the air that we breathe because they make laws about air quality control. And politicians make laws about the food that we eat because they make laws about what's clean and what's germy and what's bacteria. And politicians make all kinds of decisions about our mind, body, and health. So I include politics along with mind, body, and health. And that's the story of my life. If I was going to capture it in one word instead of mind, body, health, and politics, the word would be resilience. That's what it takes. It takes resilience. It takes reminding ourselves constantly that the very fact that I exist is a gift. And the very fact that Tugpa exists is her gift. And the fact that we are here together talking to one another right now is a gift to ourselves. It is a gift. And so the extent to which you can practice gratitude, I think that will help you and make you feel better than you already are.
Yeah.
I am so grateful just to be here with you.
I'm so grateful too. Thank you. Thank you so much for this great conversation. I'm so glad.
Thank
It was
you so much.
inspiring, you know.
And thank you for bringing me back to Turkey. Thank you for making me
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking of my dear grandmother and and Oya Kainar, who we're reaching out to.
Yeah. Yeah, we will reach. I believe. I know. Oya kaynar.
Yes.
I will see. We will see on the comments, partner
Yeah.
comments. We will see.
Okay. Let's do this again sometime. This is wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. I would love. Many, many big thanks for this great conversation, inspiring life story. Thank you, doctor.
I leave you with one word.
Yeah, please.
Mashallah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mashallah to you. See you next time.